Oh hi. Calgary, the city in the province of Alberta in Canada. It is located in the south of the province, in the field of the foothills and prairies, approximately in 80 km to the east from a watershed of Canadian Rockies. The city is located also in a zone of haying grounds of Alberta. In 2016, the population of Calgary made 1,235,171 inhabitants, and the city became the country's third most populated and the largest in Alberta, and also the most northern million city in Canada and in North America. With suburbs in 2011, the population made 1,214,839 people, and the Calgary agglomeration became the fifth largest in Canada. It is located in 294 km to the south from Edmonton, and the densely populated zone between these cities is known as the Corridor of Calgary, Edmonton. The business activity in Calgary is generally connected with oil industry, agriculture and tourism. In 1988, Calgary became the first Canadian city in which played the Winter Olympic Games. Before near Calgary Europeans lodged, it was occupied not less than 11,000 years by the Declivisky people. In 1787, the cartographer David Thompson Parazima met together with group of Indians of Apicuna on the river bank of Bow. He was the first famous European who visited this territory, and John Glenn became the first famous European who lodged in the district of Calgary in 1873. The native way of life remained almost invariable up to the 1870s until Europeans exterminated population of the American bisons before almost total disappearance. Near Calgary, the post of Northwest Mounted Police was based. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police now. The Office of Chesapeake was created in 1875 for protection of the Western Plains against the American dealers of whiskey and also for protection of fur trade. Originally the post was called Fort Brisbane by last name the officer of Chesapeake Effernay de Brisbane, but in 1876 the Colonel James McLeod renamed him into the Fort Calgary. This name was given in honor of Calgary on the island of Mull, Scotland. There is no conventional version of origin of the name of the city, but in the museum on the island of Mull explain that expression of cold guard in Drevnyslandski language means a cold garden. Probably, the Vikings living on internal Hebrides so called this area. According to other version, the name, probably, comes from the Gaelic expression of Collagurid, meadow, pasture, at shore. In 1885 was organized Banff National Park, which along with Banff Springs Hotel became the place of a pilgrimage of tourists from around the world. A starting point for those someone go to this park is the International Airport of Calgary. On November 7, 1886 there was a fire as a result of which 14 buildings were destroyed, and losses were about $103,200. Though at the same time nobody died and suffered in order that similar didn't repeat, the city authorities prepared the order according to which the increasing buildings in the downtown have to be built of Paskapiski sandstone. After in 1883 the Canadian Pacific Railroad approached the city and the railway station was built, Calgary began to turn into the significant shopping and agricultural center. Now in Calgary there is still a head department of Canadian Pacific Railway. In 1884 Calgary acquired the rights of municipality. Town. And inhabitants elected the first mayor George Murdoch. In 1894 his charter was changed for providing higher city status. City is a part of the Northwest Territories. After arrival to this area of the railroad, the government of the Dominion began to rent the pasturable earth for the minimum payment, up to 4,000 hectares on 2.5 cents per hectare a year. As a result of around Calgary, the cattle breeding began to develop actively. Being already the transport and trade hub, Calgary soon became also the center of trade in cattle and the meatpacking industry of the all-Canadian scale. From 1896 to 1914 to this area, immigrants from around the world in connection with free granting the farmstead earth were flown down. Agriculture and cattle breeding became the main components of local economy, defining the future of Calgary for many years ahead. World-famous Calgary, it is still annually carried out in July. From its small exhibition of agricultural products with competitions of cowboys which began to be held since 1912 by 4 rich owners of the ranch, turned into the largest show on the earth under the open sky. Oil in Albert was for the first time open in 1902, but it didn't play an important role in province life till 1947 when her huge stocks were open. Calgary appeared in the center of an oil boom at once. Thanks to the Arab oil embargo of 1973, prices of oil raised sharply, and the city economy grew very quickly. In 18 years the population raised on card people with card. 1971. To card. 1989. And for the next 18 years on card people. To card shit. In 2007. For years of a boom in the city, one by one there were skyscrapers, and rather low business area was quickly built up with multi-storied buildings that proceeds in now. A business part of Calgary occupied an uneasy central part of the city, and in this regard there many historical buildings from sandstone still collapse. The economy of Calgary was so closely connected with oil industry that, together with decrease in average annual price of oil in 1981 in the city, also the business activity decreased. The subsequent drop in oil prices was perceived by business as the collapse reason in oil industry, and in result and in all Calgary economy. However, she not for long depended on the low prices of oil, and by 1990 was completely restored. Because the large number of Calgarians was engaged in the energy sector, consequences of an economic crisis of the beginning of the 1980s were considerable, and unemployment rate promptly increased. However, by the end of decade the economy was restored. And Calgary quickly realized that the city shouldn't pay so much attention to oil and gas, and his economy and culture became more various since then. The period of recession marks transformation of Calgary from the average sizes of the steppe city, differing in nothing from others in the large multinational and multi-structure center. This transformation was fixed in 1988 when in the city the 15 Winter Olympic Games were held. Success of these games in fact brought it world fame. Partly thanks to increase in prices for oil, the economy in Calgary and Albert up to the end of 2008 was the most fast growing in the country. In spite of the fact that the oil and gas industry made a considerable part of economy, the city invested also in other fields of activity much, including in tourism and high-tech production. Now more than 3 1 million people are annually visited by the city to visit his festivals and in vacation spots, and especially the Calgary Stampede. The nearby alpine skiing resorts of Banff, Lake Louise and Canmore also become more and more popular with tourists, and as a result they pass also through Calgary. Light industry, high technologies, motion picture industry, electronic trading, transport and rendering services belong to other modern industries. The quality of life in the city is recognized as very high. Calgary took on this indicator the 25th place in 2006, the 24th in the 2007, 25th in the 2008, 26th in the 2009 and 28th in 2010 according to the rating of Mercer, and became the 5th city, the most comfortable for life in the world, according to Economist Intelligence Unit. EView. The source isn't specified. 906 days. In 2010 Forbes recognized Calgary as the cleanest city in the world. In 2011 Mercer also placed the city on the first place on development of systems of waste-free life support and production. In 2015 the mayor of Calgary declared intention to fight for the right of holding the Winter Olympic Games of 2026. In April 2018 the IOC published the list of applicants for holding the Winter Olympic Games of 2026, in which the National Olympic Committee of Canada with the application from Calgary appeared. On November 13, 2018 in Calgary the referendum on which 171,750 citizens, 56.4% of all which took part in voted against holding games in the city took place. On November 18 the City Council of Calgary officially refused carrying out in the city Winter Games. Calgary is located in a transitional zone between the foothills of Canadian Rockies and the Canadian Prairies. Height of the center of Calgary above sea level is about 1048 m, and height of his airport -1083 m. Actually Calgary occupies the space of 726.5 km. 2006. What, for example, exceeds the square of the city of Toronto. Through the city two large rivers flow. The Boo River flows from the northwest on the south. Her inflow of Albu flows from the south on the north, and the downtown Calgary falls into Bonaire. As usually climate in this area dry, dense vegetation, naturally, meets only in valleys of the rivers, on some slopes turned on the north and in the provincial park Fishchat. The city occupies the large territory and consists of the central part and residential districts surrounding her with various population density. Unlike the majority of the cities with big agglomeration, in Calgary the majority of suburbs, Cochrane in the northwest, Strathmore in the east, also Acreage, Springbank and Buspah in the west were a part of the city, except for such cities as Airdrie in the north. The city of Okotoks, which is formally not entering agglomeration of Calgary, is absolutely nearby to the south from it, and also it is considered a suburb. The economic Calgary area includes a few large territories, an agglomeration, and the number of her population in 2008 was 1,251,600 people. Many years the city attached to itself lands to support the growth. The last similar accession came to the end in July 2007 when the neighboring village of Shepherd was a part of the city, and city borders closely approached the village of Balzac and appeared absolutely near the cities of Airdrie and Chestermere.
Despite such proximity, neither Airdrie nor Chestermere is planned to attach to Calgary now, and Chestermere's administration even projects the development plan providing independent land development between the city and Calgary.
The city of Calgary directly borders on two districts.
County of the Rocky View
In the north, west and east. And Fotkills No. 31. In the south. The business part of the city consists of 5 residential districts. Eau Claire, including Festival Quarter. The downtown West End Commercial Centre, Chinatown and Downtown Village. The commercial centre in turn is divided into several quarters. Shopping Centre Stephen Avenue, Entertaining Quarter, Quarter of Arts and Administrative Quarter.
Separately from a business part, to the south from 9th Avenue there is the most densely inhabited residential district Calgary Beltline.
It includes several quarters, including Connaught, Victoria Crossing and a part of the Quarter Rivers.
Beltline is an object of the close-ups of municipality for reconstruction providing increase in population density and revival of the centre of Calgary.
A business part is adjoined by the first residential districts of the central part. Crescent Heights belong to them, Huntsfield Heights, Briar Hill, Hillcrest, Sunnyside, including Sved Kensington. Bridgeland to Renfrew, Montreal, Mission, Ramsey and Inglewood with Albert Park, Radisson Heights is slightly farther to the east.
The central part in turn borders on rather densely inhabited residential districts of Rosedale and Mount Pleasant in the north.
Parkdale and Glendale in the west. The Park Hill, South Calgary, including Mardelup, Bengvayu, Altadore and Killarney in the south. And Forest Lawn International Avenue in the east. Other residential districts which are usually separated from each other by highways are considered as suburban. In total in Calgary more than 180 certain residential districts.
Some of the residential districts of Calgary once were the independent cities which were a part of Calgary as he grew.
Bannis, Ogden, Montgomery, Forest Lawn, Midnapore, Rosedale and since 2007 Shepherd belong to their number. Calgary is in a zone of moderately continental climate.
The Devon classification of climates of Kyopan and a zone of frost resistance of plants 3A on classification of the Ministry of Agriculture of the USA.
With long, dry, cold, but unstable winter and in a short, moderately warm summer. Considerably the climate of the city is defined by its height above sea level and direct proximity of the Rocky Mountains. In Calgary there can be very cold winter, but the warm and dry wind Chinook in winter months sometimes blows on the city because of mountains and saves Calgarians from cold. This wind can lift in only several hours temperature in the winter to 15 C and remain several days. Chinook, the phenomenon, so usual for the Calgary winter that only once, in January 1950, for more than 100 years of meteorological observations in the winter in Calgary there was no thaw. More than a half of all winter days a daily maximum exceeds 0 C. In the winter high temperatures and lower observed in the afternoon and night, the difference often makes about 10 degrees. Calgary, the city of extremes of temperatures as record-breaking low temperature in 1893 was 45 C and record-breaking high in 1919, 36 C. About 5 days in a year temperature fall below 30°C, but the period of extremely low temperatures usually lasts not for long.
According to the Ministry of the Environment of Canada, average daily temperature in Calgary changes from
9°C in January up to 16°C in July.
Owing to arrangement of Calgary highly above sea level and dryness, summer evenings can be very cool.
The average summer minimum of temperature makes 8°C. In the afternoon, temperature in Calgary can reach 29°C in June, July and August, and sometimes in September and May.
The arid climate of Calgary with relative humidity of 55% and 45% is similar in the winter to climate in other cities in the west of the Great Plains and the Canadian prairies in the summer.
Unlike the cities located to the east, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa and even Winnipeg, the humidity in Calgary during the summer period is an exclusive factor.
The city is one of the most solar in Canada. The sun on average shines 2,400 hours there a year.
At the International Airport of Calgary in the northeast part of the city, on average in a year 412.6 mm of rainfall, 320.6 mm of rainfall in the form of rain and 126.7 in the form of snowdrop. Most of all rainfall drops out from May to August, and in June the monthly level of rainfall is maximum. In the most rainy month for all history of meteorological observations, June 2005, in Calgary 248 mm of rainfall dropped out. Droughts, which can happen at all seasons of the year, are frequent and proceed for months, and sometimes and within several years. Level of rainfall in the western areas is slightly higher than in the east, therefore groves in the western suburbs gradually give way to treeless haying grounds on eastern frontier of the city. Calgary is in the southern Alberta, where in the winter often there are strong cold snaps, though alternating with warming. Height of snow cover in Calgary exceeds 1 CS about 88 days in a year. For example, in Toronto about 65 days. However, the quantity of the dropped out snow, as well as temperature, can differ considerably in different districts of this area. Generally, it is connected with a difference in height above sea level and proximity to mountains. Temperature in the southern part of Calgary is also usually a little higher than at the airport. Thunderstorms go to Calgary about 22 days in a year, the majority of which falls on summer months. Calgary is on border of the region of Alberta, where often there are heavy rains with the hail, therefore the destructive hail happens to intervals there in several years. The hailstorm which fell upon Calgary on September 7, 19.
Tornadoes seldom appear in this area, as most often it appears to the west from the front of a dew point. In Calgary and its vicinities meets many plant species and animals. In Calgary, the northern zone of distribution of a mountain Douglasavy fir begins. Other widespread coniferous tree which is found near Calgary, a fir tree Canadian. Calgary is a modern city, at the same time much kept from the traditional culture, with her saloons and hotels, the western bars, nightclubs, soccer and hockey. Calgary is the center of music of a country in Canada sometimes called by Northern Nashville. In Calgary there are several areas where various cultures are presented. One of the most diverse residential districts of the city is Forest Lawn, where quarter near 17th Avenue Yugovostok is known also under the name of International Avenue.
There are many national restaurants and shops. In spite of the fact that many Calgarians continue to live on the outskirts of the city, become popular also more central quarters 17th Avenue, Kensington, Inglewood, Forest Lawn, Mardelup and the quarter of Mission, and population density these quarters lately increases. As a result their nightlife and cultural actions began to develop. The Public Library of Calgary and Bedding Set is a city network of public libraries with 17 offices where books, e-books, compact discs, DVD discs, the discs Blu-ray, audiobooks and other data carriers are issued. A Bedding Set, the second largest library of Canada and the sixth municipal library system of North America based on issue of books and other carriers on the house. The Central Library is located in the downtown East Village. In Calgary the Ushnobertsky Concert Hall, Jubilee, the public cultural center and the place for performing art forms is located. The Concert Hall, one of buildings, twins, two provinces, the second of which is in Edmonton, and both from them in a popular speech are known as Doobie. In this concert hall on 2538 places opened in 1957 there passed hundreds of Broadway musicals, theatrical, scenic and private performances. Calgary Doobie, the home stage for the Ballet by Alberta, the Calgary Opera Theatre, the musical Kiwanis Festival and for annual civil ceremonies on Funeral Sunday. Both concert halls work 365 days in a year and are operated by the provincial authorities. By century of the province in 2005 in both buildings considerable reconstruction was carried out. In Calgary several private theatres also work, including Unyelu Rabbit which adjoins in the Centre of Performing Art Forms of EPCA to the Calgary Symphonic Orchestra, Theatre of Calgary, the Albertsky Theatrical Project and Dastengren Theatre, the recreation centre intended for the modern live art. Calgary is also the homeland of the improvisational and theatrical games known as theatre sport. In the city the Calgary International Film Festival and the International Animation Festival are also annually held. In the city visual and abstract artists work, for example, Art Collective the United Congress, and in the business area several art galleries are opened, many of which are concentrated near Stephen Avenue and 17th Avenue. The largest of them, the Art Gallery of Calgary. IC. In Calgary there is also an Albertsky College of Fine Arts. In Calgary several marching brass bands are organized. It is Calgary Roundup Band, Calgary Stetson Show Band, Bishop Grandin Marching Ghosts and the two-time champion of displays of the World Association of the Marching Calgary Stampede Show Band brass bands, and military orchestras of Kiev Tikkums, own Royal Calgary Regiment and Calgary Scottish Regiment. In the city there are a lot of other civilian brass bands, in particular it is orchestra of the Calgary Police Service. In Calgary several annual festivals and actions are held. The Calgary International Film Festival, the Calgary Festival of Folk Music, the Calgary Comedy Fanfest Festival, the Greek Festival, Carafest, the Banff and Calgary International Literary Verdfest Festival, the Lilac Festival, Globalfest, the Calgary Festival of Extremes, a Festival Samastic, Expo Latino, the Calgary Festival of Homosexuals. The Calgary International Festival of a Living Word. Both many other cultural and national festivals concern them. The most known action in Calgary is Calgary which annually passes in July since 1912.
It is one of the largest festivals in Canada, within which the rodeo and an exhibition which in 2005 attended 242,928 people are held 10 days.
In the city several museums are opened. The Museum Glenbow is the largest in the Western Canada and consists of art gallery and gallery of Indigenous people. 3 other large museums: the Chinese Cultural Centre,
the largest autonomous cultural centre in Canada on the area of 6,500 am. The Canadian Olympic Gallery of Glory and the Museum.
In the Canadian Olympic Park, the military museums, the Museum of Choral Music and the Space Museum. The district of Calgary also attracts film directors. In the neighborhood of the city numerous movies are shot.
The movie by Thomas Selleck of Crossfire Trail was shot on the ranch near Calgary, though the scene of action of the movie is Wyoming.
In many respects, thanks to proximity of the Rocky Mountains, Calgary traditionally is the popular center of winter sports. After the Winter Olympic Games 1988 in the city, there were several large sports constructions, including the Canadian Olympic Park, luge, cross-country skiing, ski jumping, mountain skiing, a snowboard and some summer sports, and the Olympic Oval, speed skating and hockey. These constructions serve as the main places of trainings for a number of professional athletes. In summer months, the Canadian Olympic Park is used also as the place for driving by mountain bicycle. In the summer, on the Boo River, fishing is very popular. Also, Mount Calgari's golf is extremely popular, and in the city there are a lot of platforms for this sport. In August 2009, in Club of the Water Predator Bay skis approximately in 40 kilometers to the south from the city, the World Cup in a water ski was held. Within popular fight for Alberta, city teams constantly compete with the colleagues from Edmonton.
Most often it is Calgary Flames and Edmonton Oilers in the National Hockey League and Calgary Stampeders about Edmonton the Eskimo in the Canadian Football League.
In the city, many parks, including the Provincial Park Fish Shack, the Park News Hill, Bowness, Edwarty, the Inglewood Birds Wildlife Area, Park of Confederation and the Island of Princes are broken. The Park News Hill, the largest city park in Canada, together with the majority of city residential districts, these parks represent the largest multipurpose walks, driving by bicycle, roller skates, etc. The system of routes in North America.
The founder of City Vocational School of Wrestling says Stu Hart is the ancestor of one of the most known systems of fight in the history of this sport.
Sites. The downtown Calgary differs in an eclectic variety of restaurants and bars, cultural actions, public as Olympic Square, places and trade zones. Among the most known trade zones: Shopping Centre of T-Box, former Centre Calgary Eaton/TD Score, Stephen Avenue and Eau Claire Market. The Calgary Zoo, the World of Science of TELUS, a complex for the TELUS conferences, the Quarter of Chinatown, the Museum Glenbow, the Calgary Tower, the Art Gallery of Calgary, IGE, and the Centre of Performing Art Forms at Core belong to sites of the Business Centre. The Devonian Gardens occupying the space in 1.01 hectares on the 4th floor of TD Skura, over a trade zone. Some of the largest city-covered gardens in the world. To the downtown Calgary, to the north from the Quarter Eau Claire, there is also a city park of the Island of Princes. To the south from a business park are the downtown and Belt Lane. This area quickly becomes the most active and densely inhabited mixed zone in the city. In the center of Quarter there is popular 17th Avenue, known for the numerous bars and nightclubs, restaurants and shops.
During participation of Calgary Flames in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2004, in days of matches by 17th Avenue visited more than fans.
Concentration of fans in red sweaters on 17th Avenue led to the fact that during the playoffs the street began to be called Red Mile, playfully. It is easy to get to a business park by city high-speed tram.
The park, the historical village Heritage Park, representing life in Albert before World War I, where it is possible to see historical vehicles in working order, belongs to sites of the western part of the city.
Engine, wheel, steamship and electric tram. The village represents mix of exact copies of buildings and historical constructions of the southern Alberta. It is possible to carry to other important sites, the Canadian Olympic Park and Sprasmedes. Except numerous trade zones in the downtown, in Calgary the set of large suburban shopping centers is opened. The largest of them, Chinook Centre and South Mall in the south, West Hills and the Signal Hill in the southwest, Sault Trail Crossing and Durfit Meadows in the southeast, the Market Mall in the northwest, Sandrads Mall in the northeast, and New Cross Erin Mills between northern borders of Calgary and the southern borders Airdrie. The downtown Calgary differs from other residential districts in the numerous high-rise buildings. Some of these buildings, for example the Calgary Tower and Scotiabank Settledome, are so unique that are symbols of Calgary. Office buildings generally are in commercial center, whereas to the downtown West End and Belt Lane to the south from a business part, inhabited towers most often meet.
These buildings, witnesses of sharp rises in business activity and failures of the city, therefore it is easily possible to determine various periods of development which define shape of a business part by them.
The first boom in construction of skyscrapers fell on the end of the 1950th and proceeded to the 1970th. After 1980, during recession, construction of many high-rise objects was immediately stopped. Large construction was resumed only in the late 80s, the beginning of the 1990th to Winter Olympic Games 1988, and growth of economy gave an impetus. In total, in the center there are 10 office buildings not lower than 150 meters. About 40 floors. The highest of them, the Suncor Energy Center. The former Centre Petro-Canada, which is the highest administrative tower in Canada without Toronto. The Calgary Towers of Bankers Hall are highest twin towers in Canada. In a business park, construction of several larger administrative towers is planned. Thibault Jameson Place, 8th Avenue Place. 2 towers. Centennial Place. 2 towers. The City Centre. 2 towers. And very expected, though only known by hearsay, the Twin Towers of Imperial Oil and the First Canadian Centre. In 2008 in Calgary there were 264 complete multi-story buildings, 42 in a construction stage, 13 got the construction license and 63 of the offered project. Office buildings in a business park are connected by the world's largest network of pedestrian platforms. The elevated covered pedestrian bridges, which is officially called Plus 15. This name is connected with the fact that height of bridges, as a rule, is 15 feet. 4. 6 m over ground level. On a city census of 2009, the population of Calgary is 1,065,455 people. On a federal census of Statistical Service of Canada 2006, 988,193 persons lived in the city. 49.9% of his population were male, and 50.1% a female. Children are younger than 5 years made about 6% of resident population. For comparison, in Alberta this indicator is at the level of 6.2%, and in Canada in general -5.6%. In 2006 middle age in the city was 35.7 years. In Alberta -36 years, in Canada in general -39.5 years. In 2001 the city was inhabited by 878,866 people, and in 1996, 768,082 persons. From 2001 to 2006 the population of Calgary grew by 12.4%. For the same period Alberta's population increased by 10.6%, and Canada, for 5.4%. Population density in the city averaged 1,360.2 inhabitants on square kilometer. In the province on average 5.1 inhabitants on square kilometer. The city census conducted annually for negotiating with the provincial and federal governments on financial agreements in 2006 registered population a little more than card people. The population of the Calgary agglomeration in 2006 was a little more than 1.1 million people, and the economic Calgary area, slightly less than 1.17 million people. On July 25, 2006 the city administration officially announced the birth of the million resident after the census showed that the population increased approximately by 98 people a day. This date was defined only presumably by statistical approximation, and when calculating only the children who were born in families of cogariates were considered. The balance of migration in 2006 was 25794 persons a year, that much more than 12117 people/G in 2005. Usually Calgary is considered the city of conservatives where social and financial conservatives dominate. Because the city is the corporate center, the share of the workers occupied at office positions is high there. High concentration of oil and gas corporations in 1971 led to growth of Progressive Conservative Party of Peter Lockhead. In the 1990th in political culture at the federal level, the right-wing Reform Party of Canada, and on provincial, Conservative Progressionists dominated. The Green Party of Canada also nominated deputies from Calgary. On federal elections of 2004 she received 7.5% of votes on the city, and in particular, 11.3% in the constituency the north of the centre of Calgary. Before the 26th Alberta general election, the Right Union of Alberta supporting conservative financial and social reforms was organised. However, neither Alberta's union, nor his successor to the Union of Dagros managed to receive deputy chairs on provincial elections of 2008. However, with growth of population also the policy of Calgary becomes more various.
One alternative movement becoming popular was especially active during demonstrations concerning the World Oil Congress 2000 and protests of anti-globalists at B Summit in 2002.
Protesters were both locals and visitors. In the city, offices of various activist organizations and also anti-capitalist association are open. Control of Calgary is exercised according to Alberta's law on the municipal government. 1995.
Calgary elect 14 regional advisors and the mayor and city council of Calgary each 4 years.
On municipal elections of 2010, Naked was elected the mayor. Naked was also re-elected to the position in 2013 and 2017. Operational city budget in 2007 made $2.1 billion, and for 41% was provided with the property taxes. Annually, the property taxes gathers for $757 million, 386 of which it is the share of inhabited property and 371 on uninhabited.
54% of expenses are the share of a salary to city employees, salary and grants.
In Calgary, independently of each other, there are two departments of secondary education: State and Special. Both departments consist of 7 elected authorized representatives representing on 2 areas from 14. Departments of secondary education are considered as a part of urban policy in Calgary, as are chosen along with City Council. In Provincial Legislative Assembly of Calgary, 23 deputies, including 16 Conservative Progressionists, 4 Albertsky Liberals, 2 members of the Union of Aid Dogros and 1 member of Albertsky Party represent. From December 14, 1992 to December 14, 2006.
A chair of Calgary Elbow, the provincial prime minister and the head of Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta, Rolf Klein, took exactly 14 years.
Klein was for the first time elected in Legislative Assembly of Alberta in 1989, and on September 20, 2006 resigned.
On the post of the provincial prime minister and head of Progressive Conservative Party, he was replaced by the deputy of Legislative Assembly from the Fort Saskatchewan, Vagrevilla at Stelmach.
After this replacement of the leadership, the role and representation of Calgary in provincial questions were considerably reduced, as in provincial his cabinet 3 deputies instead of 8 began to represent. At the same time, only one Greg Melchin kept the ministerial post. On elections of 2008, Liberals increased number of deputies from Calgary from 4 to 5. Were unexpected, not result of PGP to Calgary, caused by discontent with the government of Stelmach, especially in the centre of Calgary, and the fact that, at the same time, PGP won a large victory in Edmonton. In general, the number of the Liberal deputies was laid off to 9, and for the first time in the history most this fraction represents the constituencies of Calgary. All 8 federal deputies from Calgary are members of the Conservative Party of Canada, CPP. Predecessors of the CPP traditionally reserved the majority in Calgary. The southwest of Calgary is the deputy from the federal constituency, the Prime Minister and the head of the CPP, Stephen Harper. It is interesting that the same district was represented also by Preston Manning, the head of Reform Party of Canada, who was a predecessor of the CPP. The former Prime Minister and the head of Progressive Conservative Party of Canada. Also predecessors of the CPP. Joe Clark represented the constituency the centre of Calgary. From 22 Prime Ministers of Canada, 2 represented any constituency of Calgary directly as Prime Ministers. R.B. Bennett, since 1930 on 1935 representing west of Calgary, was the first of them. Economy. The oil and gas industry doesn't hold an ascendant position in the Calgary economy anymore as before, though her share in a gross city product and remains to the largest. In 2006, the real gross product of Calgary, in the prices of 1997, made 52.39 billion Canadian dollars, and a share of oil and gas and mining industry in -12%. The largest oil and gas companies are BP, Encana, Imperial Oil, Suncor Energy, Shell Canada, France Canada and Nexen. Thus, in Calgary, managements of 87% of the Canadian producers of oil and natural gas and 66% of the coal mining enterprises are located. In 1996, Canadian Pacific Railway transferred the main office from Montreal to Calgary and now is one of the largest employers of the city, having the state in 3,100 workers. In 2005, from Toronto, the head department was transferred also by Imperial Oil, thanks to low Albertski corporate taxes and for bigger proximity to the oil enterprises. It led to resettlement about 400 families. Shaw Communications, 7,500 workers. Nova Chemicals, 4,900 workers. TELUS, 4,500 workers. Nexen, 3,200 workers. Sierra, 2,500 workers. Shell Canada, 2,200 workers. Dye Chemical Canada, 2,000 workers. Concern other large employers. In October 2006, Encana declared Thibault's construction, a 58-story skyscraper in the business center of the city. This new headquarters of corporation, upon completion of construction, will become the highest building in Canada outside Toronto. In 2009, human resources of the city made 649,300 people, and a share of economically active population -76.3%. In 2006, unemployment was at one of the lowest levels among the large cities of Canada, 1.2%. Therefore, in the city, even shortages qualified as observed and unskilled workers. Bonuses when signing are often applied to workers of the industry of service, and initial rates of the salary for pupils of elementary school in local express and snack bars reach $15 an hour. Hotels in a business park had to close the whole floors because of a lack of office personnel for cleaning of all rooms. A local boom of housing construction in combination with large projects of road construction and the competition to northern oil fields to the high salary create an intense situation with labor. Near the International Airport of Calgary there is WestJet headquarters, and in the territory of the airport, head department of Enerjet. The headquarters of Canadian Airlines and Zip, Air Canada subsidiary, before the elimination, also were near the city airport. Education. In 2010-2011 academic year, 9949 pupils bought senior secondary education at 223 English language high schools which are under authority of the Calgary Council for Issues of Education, and together with pupils of Educational Service Chinook and getting a remote education, this number increase up to 102,970. For 3000 more people attended 95 schools of the certain English-speaking Calgary Catholic School District. While the small French-speaking community has departments of secondary education, free and Catholic, which serve Calgary and more extensive neighboring districts. Also in the city, several provincial schools are opened. In Calgary there are several unique schools, including National Sports School, the country's first high school intended for athletes Olympians.
In Calgary there are also many private schools, including High Schools Randall, West Island Boarding Schools Randall, Clergy Water, Mountain View, Weber, Delta West, Masters, Adventist Boarding School of Chinnacoons, Spiritual School of Menno Simmons and School A.
In Calgary there is also a high school of Lord Byverbrook, largest in the Western Canada, in 2005-2006 academic year totaling 2241 pupils. Now the number studying at Biverbrookovsky School makes 2013 people. 2009. And on this indicator some schools are ahead of her. The High School of the Western Canada contains 2035, and High School of Sir Winston Churchill minus 1983 pupils. 2009. In Calgary there are 5 large public institutions of the higher education. The major institution appropriating academic degrees is the Calgary University, where in 2006 28807 students studied. The Montreal University from 13000 students appropriating academic degrees in several areas, and the Institute of Technology of the Southern Alberta about more than 14000 students, which is providing polytechnic and secondary professional education, issuing certificates, diplomas and appropriating degrees in applied areas. Treat 2 other large higher educational institutions. The main campus of Institute of Technology of the Southern Alberta is in the northwest sector to the north from a business part. Higher educational institutions in Calgary of the smaller size are the University of Bow Valley, Albertski College of Arts and Design and the Columbia University. Also there are several private humanitarian educational institutions. University College Embrew, official Canadian University College of Church of the Nazarene and Christian and Missionary Union, and St. Mary's University. In Calgary there is also the only town of professional college Devry in Canada.
The main newspapers in Calgary are Calgary Herald and Calgary eDignity.
In the city, television networks Global, CITIT, Carteed and CBC have the local studios. Calgary is a transport hub between the central and western Canada. The International Airport of Calgary, YIC, in the northeast of the city is the third in Canada on the movement of aircrafts, and besides, it is the large center of cargo transportation. Non-stop flights go to the different cities of Canada, the USA, Europe, Central America and Asia from here. Thanks to arrangement of Calgary on the Trans-Canadian Highway and the main line of the Canadian Pacific Railroad, TED, including switchchart of Elite. It is the important center of transportation of goods.
Viaduct Rail doesn't make long-distance railway communication with Calgary. Rocky Mountaineer and Royal Canadian Pacific are engaged in it.
Calgary has a network of large streets and freeways. In this network of the road, lying from the east on the west, avenues are called, and lying from the north on the south are called as streets. Many avenues and streets are numbered. Up to 1904 streets had various names, and since then all streets got numbers in the direction from the downtown. Streets in residential areas and also paid and free freeways usually don't correspond to the general grade and therefore most often aren't numbered.
However, between builders and the city there is an agreement under which not numbered streets in Calgary have to have a prefix by the name of the residential district that they were simpler to be found in the city.
Calgary Transit renders services of city transport by means of network of bus routes and lines of the high-speed tram. The Calgary tram, known as C-Train, was one of the first similar means of transport in North America. Trams ply on 3 lines, but to 2 routes, with a total length of way of 48.8 kilometers. Mainly, flush with other transport, but with a right-of-way, on which 42% working in a business part are transported. In the fourth quarter 2009, the C-Train system transported on average 266,100 passengers on weekday, and became, thus, network of high-speed trams, the third on intensity in North America, having been inferior only to the Monterey subway and the Toronto network of trams. Bus routes there are more than 160, and the rolling stock working at them makes 800 units. As an alternative to more than 260 kilometers of the combined bicycle paths on streets in the city, the network multipurpose. The bicycle, walks, driving on roller skates, etc. Paths with a total length of 635 kilometers is organized. In Calgary, 3 large hospitals of emergency aid for adults are opened and 1 large pediatric institution of emergency aid is the Medical Center Foothills, which is the largest hospital in Albert, Peter Lockhead Center, Rockview Hospital and the Children's Hospital, largest in the steppe provinces of Alberta. All of them are under authority of the Calgary district of the Alberta healthcare system. In Calgary there is also a cancer center of Tom Baker, the leading cancer center in Albert, located in the Medical Center Foothills. The Women's Polyclinic of Grace, rendering various medical services, and Institute of Cardiovascular Surgery Libin. Besides, in Calgary, hundreds of polyclinics and dental clinics of the smaller size, including Sheldon M. High Humor Center, large round-the-clock consulting clinic, and the Medical and Diagnostic Center Richmond of the Road, La Dietzer, are open. The Medical Center of the Calgary University also cooperates with the Calgary District of Healthcare in the field of studying of cancer, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, injuries of joints, arthritis, and in the field of genetics. 4 largest Calgary hospitals taken together have more than 2,100 beds and provide employment to more than 11,500 people. Presence of the Canadian Armed Forces naturally influenced local economy and culture from the very beginning of the 20th century, when here the squadron of a cavalry of Strathcona was sent. After many unfortunate attempts to create own city part on April 1, 1910, at last, the 103rd Regiment, the Calgary Shooters, was organized. After World War II, in the form of Carey's Barracks and Harvey's Barracks, the base of the Canadian Armed Forces, BACAF, of Calgary was founded. The base remained the most important establishment of the Department of National Defense, D&D, in Calgary until it wasn't deactivated in 1998, when the majority of parts was relocated in Baval's Edmonton. Despite this closing, on all city several spare parts of the Canadian Armed Forces and Office of Extra Army Training of Officers are still placed. The spare part of Navy of Tecumseh's own Royal Calgary Regiment, KCAC. The Calgary Scottish Regiment, with orchestra. The 746th Squadron of Communication, the 14th. Calgary. Office Battalion, the 15th. Edmonton. Medical Group to Calgary, the 14th. Edmonton. Platoon of Military Police to Calgary. The 41st Group of Communication to Calgary. The 33rd Engineering Squadron. And also few personnel structure of support of regular armed forces concern them. The recent economic boom and rapid growth in Calgary resulted in such results as growth of the city and debt on infrastructure projects. Without having geographical barriers to growth, apart from Tsuut'in's reservation, suburbs considerably expanded for very short term. It created difficulties in providing the population of the city with necessary transport infrastructure. Belt Lane and Downtown-Istville reorganization was directed to significant increase in population density in the central region, but she didn't stop rates of growth. In 2003 the total number of the population of residential districts of a business part. Commercial center of a business part, Downtown-Istville, the downtown West End, Eau Claire and Chinatown, was slightly higher than 12600 people. Besides, 17200 people lived in Belt Lane to the south from a business part that in the sum gives about 30000 inhabitants. Because of growth of the city, his southwest borders directly adjoin now to the Indian reservation of Tsuut'in. New housing construction demanded carrying out from the most southwest borders of the city of the large highway from the downtown there, but because of difficulties in negotiations, construction of the highway is still not begun with Tsuut'in. Also far. Write comments. Read comments. Interesting people will tell interesting stories. All of good mood and good luck.